Thank you, Marta, for the warm introduction, and thank you to you, Greg, and the entire CABA team for inviting us to lead this this interactive think tank. I think everyone is going to learn a whole lot, and I think we're going to have some great conversations and dialogue as well. I have with me our panelists today, and would like to introduce Wanda Lau, who is the editorial director for media brands Smart Buildings Technology, as well as LED Magazine. We have Marta Sankoti, who is the Smart Buildings Program Director at the Telecommunications Management Association. Marta is responsible for developing assessment criteria and services for smart buildings. We also have Jules Barker. Jules is the Global Director of Product at WiredScore, and he is responsible for creation, delivery, and evolution of all products and associated services, including WiredScore digital connectivity certification and SmartScore. We had Patrick McLaughlin, who's the editor of Smart Buildings Technology, scheduled to join us. Something has taken him away sort of at the last minute, but he conveys his regrets, and I'm sure he'll be looking forward to reviewing the recording of this. Our topic, as mentioned, is Smart Buildings Certification Programs. We'll start with our panelists, as Marta mentioned, sharing some slides and information about their respective organizations and programs, but this is important. This is not a webinar. It's a think tank, and it's built to be an interactive conversation. So after our panelists present, as Marta mentioned, we'll shift to an interactive Q&A format where you, the audience, can pose questions to our panelists, as well as share your own experiences and perspectives when it comes to smart building certification programs. At this time, I'm going to turn over the mic to Wanda Lau, who would like to share some opening thoughts and comments. Wanda?
Thanks, Russell, and thank you to CABA for having us. I just wanted to say quickly that this is such an exciting time for smart buildings. I see this period as analogous to the early 1990s, when we were looking at green buildings and we're trying to determine what actually constitutes a green building. So we had BREEAM come out in the UK, we had Energy Star with Department of Energy and EPA, but then it's really in 1998 when the US Green Building Council piloted LEED, they really formulated what was a holistic approach to sustainable design. And I think that helped drive a marketing message for owners and real estate developers to be interested in what actually is a green building and how it could actually generate an ROI for the business and make sense. And I see this as such an important time for smart buildings, and we're so excited to be at sort of the beginning as smart buildings become more enter the mainstream, and especially in a time when we need more climate action and more people who are knowledgeable about what constitutes smart buildings, what technology is needed, how it can kind of contribute to the whole building experience, not just for the building, but also for the environment and for the occupants. So as Russell mentioned, we'll begin with the brief presentations from two of the first smart building certification programs. I know there are many others, as someone mentioned, but we'll have Marta Sankoti from SPIRE start, and she will be, she's from the TIA, and then we'll follow that presentation with Jules Barker from WiredScore/SmartScore. Thank you, Marta. Go on, Marta. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. Thank you, everybody. I'm Marta Sankoti, Smart Buildings Program Director at TIA, with a presentation of the SPIRE TIAUL Smart Buildings Program. All right, so as a quick introduction, TIA is the trusted association for the connected world, representing over 400 global manufacturers and vendors of ICT equipment that serves and empowers communications networks worldwide.
Marta, you need to share your screen.
Oh,
thank you.
Here we go.
How about now? Okay, thank you, thank you.
Good deal.
Our communities of interest include standards development, technology enablement, performance improvement, and government advocacy. Under technology enablement, we have the Smart Buildings program, where we develop the assessment criteria for the SPIRE program. SPIRE is the name of the TIA-UL partnership and is also the name of our joint program, the SPIRE Smart Buildings program. The TIA Smart Buildings program was initiated in early 2018, and our main deliverable is a set of criteria to assess smart buildings performance. We call those are the SPIRE assessment criteria documents. In January 2020, we partner with UL Solutions. They are well known as a global leader in safety science, and they deliver testing, inspection, and certification services. For the SPIRE partnership, UL provides the services based on the TIA Smart Buildings assessment criteria. In early 2018, TIA members representing manufacturers, consultants, service providers, they got together and proposed what was to become the TIA Smart Buildings program. The need they identified at the time was to create a specification to guide building projects in using current and new technologies and best practices. These participants formed the Smart Buildings Working Group that now has 100+ participants from more than 60 organizations. Our main deliverable is the Smart Buildings Assessment Criteria collection of documents. And in developing these, we strive to be vendor and technology neutral, and we strive to reach consensus on the content we develop. These are some of our Smart Buildings Working Group participant organizations, showing here the most active contributors. SPIRE offers holistic evidence-based assessments for smart building smartness. We launched the SPIRE program 2 years ago, as mentioned, with a self-assessment service. And last year, we announced a second service, the verified assessment. To get some context for how we view smart buildings, if we consider the technology used to operate buildings, we see a progression from pneumatic isolated building controls to current increasing digitalization and looking at the emergence of autonomous buildings in the next decades. Buildings have increasingly strong global economic influence, as seen in the numerous stats and publications available. We live and work extensively in buildings, and we expect them to offer an environment where activities and experiences are successful for all stakeholders. We see the increasing pace of urbanization, energy and environment policies continue to update decarbonization goals. And we are now working in hybrid environments where the occupant well-being, experience, productivity, as well as meeting the occupant expectations continue to be a top priority. So all these needs and many more, they drive complexity of building technologies and operations, which in turn creates digitalization drivers. Some of them are listed on the left side. These drivers are supported by a variety of technology enablers that include increased use of sensors, faster and pervasive connectivity, systems interoperability that generates data for digital automation, and we see service variety as driven by occupant expectations. All these work in the context of qualified staff shortages and new types of risks like cybersecurity or sustainability challenges. An important aspect here is that in the end, buildings need to support and advance both the owners and the tenants, business missions and goals. Quite often, building inefficiencies need to be addressed, and some of those are included here. An example that is often cited is that for many years, building systems such as HVAC, lighting, access control, they have operated as their own silos inside a building. Other challenges include maintenance backlogs, labor shortage, operational gaps, technology gaps that inhibit the digital building transformation. And the best way to address these inefficiencies is to break down the silos through strategic systems integrations. And this is the time to introduce the SPIRE Smart Buildings concept. We have seen the words intelligent and smart frequently used in reference to buildings, but there are no industry-wide or agreed definitions for these, and the aspects implied here can vary a lot. They can refer to specific technologies used, like energy harvesting, digital twins, or smart materials like smart concrete, energy optimization, operations optimizations like fall detection diagnostic, autonomous capabilities. For SPIRE, we associate the term smart with digital technologies and the use of data to improve occupant experience and the building and business outcomes. In this sense, smart buildings are unique systems of systems environments that incorporate new technologies. They have many devices, converged subsystem networks, large stakeholder variety. Typically, they have long supply chains. So pointing here to great complexity and continuous evolution. At a high level, buildings can be broken down to several main components: people, assets, and processes and applications. Each of these has a variety of dependencies and requirements, and these may come in conflict at an integration or at a priority level. What ties these components is the activities in the building or the jobs to be done by building participants. All who work, live, play in the building, they all have devices, access to data, and access to communication channels. Think of it as a hive of people who have jobs to do in the building. So what makes the building smart is how these components come together to create a cohesive entity. And for that, stakeholders need to work together as a team. Then network convergence and subsystem interoperability that includes data sharing for applications and services that mesh and take advantage of the building information. And also, it's important to have clarity and good understanding of the processes, services, starting with assets, resources, responsibilities, and overall commitment to building goals. These are the 6 categories of functionality that we use to assess the smartness of a building. The question and answers in the criteria documents refer to key building elements that take into consideration the entirety of a smart building. And they probe for the level of proficiency in managing those key elements. The final SPIRE building scoring and rating is based on all of these 6 categories. The SPIRE program consists of the assessment criteria and an online tool and services. These are the SPIRE services that implement the unbiased review using the unified assessment criteria. You can apply for a self-assessment and pretty quickly get started with the online assessment, self-assessment. You enter your data and get insight into the current state of your smart building ecosystem. This will require input from your functional team, but the entire process can be conveniently performed online. The verified assessment service is a comprehensive evaluation of your smart building and is conducted as a combination of on-site and virtual activities. The SPIRE auditor will review the technology, systems, processes for an opportunity to earn a verified SPIRE Smart Buildings rating, which will help promote your investment in smart technologies and performance. SPIRE provides value for all types of stakeholders. To start with, building managers can use SPIRE to identify key strengths as well as areas of improvement for their buildings. Facility and portfolio managers can use SPIRE to get a comprehensive view into all their buildings and where each building stands. And that helps prioritize upgrades for ROI maximization and for alignment with business goals. In general, SPIRE helps users understand the true meaning of smart for a building, by deep diving into each component and providing insights into improvement that help a building to achieve its target outcomes. This is a snapshot of the online SPIRE tool. It captures configurations for managing property information, users, and the teams involved. And it shows the 6 assessment criteria categories with progress, information, and scores. At the end of the assessment, a detailed report is provided that indicates the current functionality and where improvements can be made. And that is a big help in formulating a business roadmap. So to sum up, TIA and our partner UL, we have developed SPIRE by tapping into the expertise of our Smart Building Working Group participants and the UL service development and deployment practice. SPIRE provides a holistic building assessment that takes into consideration key building elements and their interaction. Critical to building projects and business success is bringing stakeholders as a team in the same room, and SPIRE encourages stakeholders to do that. SPIRE provides detailed information and insight for the current state of the building, and it also helps formulate a strategy that guides future projects and capital investments decisions, basically being a guide on the journey a journey to a smarter building. So smarter is the keyword there, a journey to smarter. The SPIRE free self-assessment gives an introduction into what makes a building smarter and is the first step before taking an auditor-assisted verified assessment. So take the free self-assessment, get started and get an understanding on SMART, and then understand the audit process, and then get a quote for a building verified assessment you can use to better your building. Here are contact and information links for both TI and UL. And on the UL website, you will find additional information about SPIRE deployment, including news, case studies, and also information on how to use the SPIRE marketing materials related to assessments. The Smart Buildings program is a membership-based program. It's open to industry participants, so you're welcome to join us. And with that, thank you, and looking forward to the discussion. Back to you, Russell.
Thank you so much, Marta. That was an excellent overview of your organization and of SPIRE. With no further ado, I'd like to shift over and hand the con to Jules Barker and let him share his screen. Just one thing, Marta, we have several requests to get access to the PowerPoint content afterwards, so I'll let you respond in the Q&A and then maybe work towards how that can be achieved.
Sure, thank you.
Jules?
Hello, everybody. Could I get a thumbs up from someone you can see the screen? Oh, I can't see anyone. Could I get a verbal yes from
Thumbs
someone?
up.
Awesome.
Yes.
Cool.
You're good.
Thanks, Russell. So thank you very much. I'll talk through WiredScore as a company, and then the two products that we have, WiredScore and SmartScore, and explain how they all fit together into the ecosystem. So that's what I'll talk about. What do we aim to do? WiredScore, we aim to set the standard for technology in the built world, and that's through certification and education, and possibly worth pausing on education briefly, which is not something we really talked about until the last year or so. But as you'll see sewn through what I'm about to talk about, we don't just see ourselves as the badge, we also see ourselves as a company that helps enable people to understand better how to use technology in the built environment. So our two products, our two certifications are WiredScore and SmartScore. I was actually just about to say that SmartScore is the one that is the better comparator with what we've just been seeing, but actually between WiredScore and SmartScore, there is both a strong overlap. So why do we do what we do? What is the benefit that we believe we bring to our clients? We believe they sit on two sides. So on one side, there is specific building level benefits. It's about delivering leasing and branding value so that a client can much better position their building and describe what they do in the market, but also improve the design and the operation and the delivery of technology into the built environment, whether that's connectivity infrastructure or smart buildings outcomes, and thereby by doing that ultimately drive asset value, because you have a future-ready building that leases faster, that leases at a higher level and doesn't need as much rework through its life cycle. All of that obviously drives increased asset value. And then on the corporate side of things, we also aim to support our clients with ESGR, and the R there being resilience, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with ESG, and also the branding and positioning of that company and their ability to present to the investors and other key stakeholders proof that they are forward-looking in terms of technology for their buildings, for their assets. We've worked with a huge number of clients across the globe over the last 10 years or so, and there is a selection of them. I apologize to anyone on this call who is at a company that's not shown on this slide. There are too many to show, I'm afraid. And similarly, one thing that I'd like to echo from what Marta was just talking about, we've also worked very closely with global partners to create and deliver our certifications. And these are some of the companies that we work with as third-party companies to both help us understand what the industry needs, but then deliver the actual certifications directly to our clients. We call them accredited professionals, APs. We've been around for around a decade, and for the first, what's that, 6 years of our life, it was focused on WiredScore Office. Then more latterly, we've expanded into the home world, again focused on WiredScore connectivity, and I'll explain the difference between WiredScore and SmartScore in a second. And then over the past couple of years, SmartScore Office as well. And that brings us to a total of these sorts of numbers in terms of the number of people that we have, the number of buildings that we have live in the market at the moment. So what is WiredScore of the two certifications? It's delivering a certification that solves these challenges for our clients. This is what we perceive are the challenges. How do you create a resilient building where the connectivity is strong? How do you create the power of choice for occupiers so that an occupier can come in and not be lumbered with one service provider that exists there? How do you make sure that building is ready for whatever the future may bring? And how do you make sure that both wireless and wired connectivity is strong? So what do we measure within that? There, as you can see, 5 categories of what WiredScore measures. There's connectivity, both mobile and fixed, the infrastructure to enable that, the resilience, making sure that building is resilient. And we're finding that right now that's a particularly critical area. As our clients get more and more focused on ESG, that concept of resilience is incredibly important. I think we're all beginning to recognize that, very sadly, no matter how much we reduce emissions, we are still going to go over the 1.5 target, and there are going to be climate impacts no matter how much we reduce emissions over the next few years. And therefore, we need to not only be creating buildings that are reducing emissions, but ones that are resilient for whatever the future may bring. The fourth category is readiness. To what extent can a tenant expect to just switch on as soon as they enter a building? And then the last one is innovation. To what extent are you innovating and pushing the boundaries? So SmartScore, what does that look at? SmartScore, as this, in fact, I'm going to leave this slide because I'm going to come back to that. Apologies. So why are we doing this now? Marta talked a little bit about this, as did Wanda. And I thought one thing that was really interesting was the concept of the difference in the 90s. And one thing I've always reflected on in the kind of 10 years or plus that I've been in this space is that our homes and our private lives have changed extraordinarily over the last 30 or 40 years in a way that offices until very recently really had not. And you could leave your home and feel like you were stepping out of 2013 or wherever it might have been, and walking into your office and feeling like you were stepping back into 1993. And that's a big impetus, I think, for why SmartScore exists and why smart buildings are beginning to exist. But very specifically, what SmartScore aims to serve within that is assisting the industry in creating a joined up approach for defining what is a smart building, what good looks like, filling a knowledge gap in that we found that there were lots of our clients on the WiredScore side coming to us and saying, look, we've heard about smart buildings. We recognize the importance of implementing technology in buildings, but we don't know how to do it. We don't know where to start. And then the third thing is where clients were coming to us and saying, well, we do know how to do it, but we just don't know how to justify the expense. We don't know where to put the money to make sure that we're delivering a strong ROI. And so those are three of the areas that SmartScore seeks to solve. How does SmartScore work? Fundamental to our approach of SmartScore is that it's outcome-driven certification. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, it talks about what we believe a smart building is. And the definition is I think, similar but different, Marta, to what you showed for SPIRE. So we assert that a smart building is one that delivers outstanding outcomes for all users through digital technology to exceed evolving expectations. And for me, the absolutely pivotal word in that sentence is outcomes. A fundamental tenet of our approach is that everything must start with the outcomes, not with the technology. Because if you start with the technology, you end up either delivering stuff that won't last or delivering stuff that is that will be pointing towards the wrong effects. So what are the outcomes? For us, we've defined 4 critical outcomes that a brilliant smart building will serve excellently. I apologize. First one is experience, delivering an inspirational experience. Second one is a sustainable building. Third one is cost efficiency. And the fourth is future readiness. So any good smart building will deliver against all 4 of those. Underneath that, how does the scorecard work? Well, we split our scorecard into 2 different sections, and about 2/3 of it are user functionality and 1/3 of it is technical foundations. The user functionality essentially is a series of user stories that we say, for example, a user story might be, as a worker in an office, I want to quickly and efficiently be able to find a meeting room. And then we will score the building based on its how well it delivers against one of those user stories. And the better it delivers against it, the more effectively, the more efficiently it delivers against it, the more credits that it's allocated. However, we do recognize that underpinning that, there needs to be solid technical foundations in order to provide the resilience, in order to provide the excellence. So, for example, those are things like connectivity. Those are things like the network. But there are also things like cybersecurity policies. There are data sharing policies. So it's the policies and the technological foundations that underpin that. Those are the user functionalities. We split into 6 categories. I'll not read them out for you. And those are the technical foundations. Again, I won't read them out for you. Fairly self-explanatory. And that's my brief overview. It's I realize, a very quick run through of what we are, and I'm obviously delighted to answer any questions afterwards in more detail.
Thank you, Jules. That was a great overview, very concise, and you packed a lot of valuable material in a quick time. So now let's get a conversation going and some Q&A going. As Marta mentioned, we're going to have 3 ways to answer questions. The first will be raise hand. Then we will look at the Q&A box and take questions via that functionality, and then the chat functionality. And we'll do it in that order to keep some semblance of structure going. When you ask a question, can you please speak slowly and clearly and identify the person to whom the question is directed? And also, if you wouldn't mind, identify yourself and your company or organization if you would like to. And then finally, feel free to share your own experiences and perspectives. But if you'll please keep your comments brief, we have a lot of folks in attendance who want to contribute and learn. So let me see what we have in terms of hands raised. I don't. Okay.
So Russell, right now we have David Katz followed by John Larry or Chris Larry. Maybe David, if you'd like to unmute yourself, and John, if you'd also like to contribute to the conversation if it's along the same topic. Yes, please go ahead, David.
Thank you.
Okay. Other than my new cameras breaking up the sound, respectfully, I welcome all the smart building programs, including the one that we developed previously for CABA many years ago, way ahead of its time. The building people know, just like you can get Green Globes, you can get BREEAM, and you could get LEED. I think each one of your programs are great. I think we're learning from them. We were approached by the China Academy of Building Research, who did an evaluation on smart buildings in China and wanted to get North American input, so we collaborated with them. So I welcome questions about our site and how we're using it. And I do have a question as to what is free.
It's like you're cutting out there.
David, you may have been cut off. Can you repeat the actual question itself?
One of our downfalls with regard to the CABA BIQ, one, it was ahead of its time, and 2, people didn't really want to pay for another assessment. They were busy with LEED. Clearly, we know SPIRE. We've seen what it includes. We know WiredScore because we've studied these. What is it that's to?
Oh, David, I think you cut out there again. Do you want to ask your question? What is the free component? Is that what you're inquiring? Yes. Okay. So maybe for Jules and maybe Marta, Jules, if you want to maybe answer that, and then followed by Marta.
Yeah, I think that's a question for Marta. So WiredScore doesn't structure itself around a freemium model. So I think that's a question for Marta.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, David, for asking. So the self-assessment presents a subset of the question and answers in the SPIRE assessment criteria. And you can take that online. You apply for a self-assessment, and I'm glad to see that my colleague, Monica Kosick from UL, she's in attendance, as well as several of my TIA colleagues. So we can all help with the questions you have. So the self-assessment subset of the entire criteria set, you take the questions at your pace, you gather information, you understand what your building is about. You'll get a score that's a subjective score, right? Because you will not have the benefit of talking to an auditor and getting into the all the details of what that functionality entails. But you have a very good view into the span of concerns, complexity of the building. So I think that's something that we can all appreciate, what a complex environment we work with in a building, and why our efforts, TIA, UL, SPIRE, but also WiredScore, SmartScore, It's an industry effort and with other certifications to bring clarity and improve smartness of buildings. So David, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I just originally, you know, it was a charge, and now I heard you say it was free, and so people asked me about it. I also will say that our BIQ, because building research, we made it bilingual, including French Canadian for our Canadian friends. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Russell, I believe we have, I'm not sure, John, if you wanted to say anything or if your question was answered.
Yeah, I'll ask one question. This is Chris Larry. I'm with EXP US Services. We're a consultant engineering firm. I just wondered, between the two different systems, what is your main focus and how do you stand apart from each other?
I think you're asking if we're both very well in tuned and familiar with each other's system. Unfortunately, I cannot answer some of those questions. I mean, Jules, I'll let you start answering that question.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Marta. Look, I think that's quite a difficult question for me to answer. I can talk. I'm delighted to talk about what WiredScore is and SmartScore is. I find it quite difficult to talk about what SPIRE is and isn't. So I tried to lay out in my presentation some of the things that I think why SmartScore is, and then Marta, you can maybe contribute with a hold on that's exactly the same, or no, that is an important difference. But some of the kind of fundamental tenets I think about what make SmartScore is the starting from the outcomes, and then being kind of by, with, and from the industry. And I know, Marta, that's very, very similar to SPIRE, but very important to us is we built SmartScore through something called the Smart Council, which was a collection of current and possible clients who wanted to have universal agreement about what makes good for a smart building. And so those, I think, are the two really important fundamental tenets of what SmartScore is. Marta, I feel that the second probably overlaps with you, although yours, SPIRE, as I understand it, is more by, with, and from the smart building providers rather than by, with, and from the clients. And I can't really comment on the first of those two. But Marta, does that give you something to bounce off?
Sure, absolutely. So extremely valuable to look at outcomes, right? For us, I would say, and of course my colleagues can interject here. For us, it's really important to understand what is in the building. Again, going back to complexity of what you could have in the building as old, new equipment, your providers, like suppliers, stakeholders, and we see that as a critical aspect, understanding what you have. Then in terms of grading functionality or the proficiency of certain functionality of the building, of course, that needs to tie with your business goals. So there's the goal of the building owner. There are goals of the tenants. They have businesses in those buildings. So why would you opt for higher proficiency in a certain area? It's not always warranted or required. What you need to care about is your business goals. So that's where SPIRE can help a lot with understanding where you are and then provide that guide for a roadmap for creating a strategy, right? So you've probably heard the saying, a plan is not a strategy. How do you create a strategy to get to a better building? So helping creating that roadmap. And my colleagues like to point out there are certifications where you can get a good score where SPIRE would not grade that same functionality as great, because the goals and focus are different. Again, for us, the focus is on the holistic aspects, how these aspects of functionality blend together across those 6 categories. And let's say, so to give you an example, let's say you do you undertake a project, you install sensors, some new applications, analytics, smart application. You will not know for a while how well that project is doing. So that's why using SPIRE before and after that project would be extremely useful to see how that helps, how you're getting to your business goals. Does implementing that project help, and to what extent?
Russell, I think we have Harry Smink that has his hand up. Harry, did you want to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me there?
Yep, you're on.
Sorry about that. Hey, Marta. Hey, Jules. Quick question. Great job both on the presentations. One of the things that I'm the president of a company called Smart Buildings Online, and we're doing a lot of IoT networks in buildings. One of the things that we constantly run into is the language barriers. Marta mentioned the siloed systems, but do you see any, do either one of you see any movement towards getting to a common language for data? We have Haystack, we have Brick, we have a couple other different programs out there, but I don't hear much activity about getting to a common language. So just wanted to get your input on that.
Yeah, Harry, good question, and nice to see you here. So there's, we know that there's no reference architecture or no definitive model for a smart building. It's a too complex an environment to even attempt that, right? And you're pointing specifically to data taxonomies, to ontologies, Haystack, Brick schema. We for SPIRE are currently not getting into those details. We know when we, for instance, develop cybersecurity assessments, we know that looking at frameworks, standards, we do notice the difference in terminology, and looking into adopting controls, so not to reinvent the wheel, adopting controls from different frameworks and standards, we do see this problem of the language barriers and the fact that you may have building owners, consultants, participants in these assessments that would come with completely different understanding of what we SPIRE understand and use as terminology. And for verified assessment, a big part of the effort is to do that orientation or the pre-audit session where we do that alignment on terms and expectations for the assessment. But very good point, and hard to cover that in assessments that have a limited budget of questions or of topics you can address. So assuming you can address, like ask 200, 300 questions, you would not be able to fit all those aspects. So this is a challenge that we recognize, and it's something that we have to work together towards resolving, to removing this barrier.
Very good. Thanks, Marta.
Sure.
Marta, it looks like Matthew Chambers has his hand raised.
Hi, thank you so much. Great presentations. This is for Jules. I want to ask, I know that for asset classes, you guys are focused on office and home. Are you guys looking to, or have you guys already started to focus on other asset classes as well?
Yeah, I mentioned very briefly homes, so office and home. We focus predominantly on office. Home at the moment is restricted to what I describe as the institutional home market. So what in the US you call multifamily, and we would call build to rent over here. And we absolutely will be expanding that beyond into other asset classes. Being open about that, what we found is that where we've gone too quickly into different asset classes, we end up creating something that isn't good enough, isn't valuable enough, isn't helpful enough. So we want to do that in quite a thoughtful way and make sure that what we are creating is exactly what that sector really needs, because we could just sort of copy paste what we've got and throw it at the industrial market, for example, but what an industrial smart building is fundamentally different from what a smart office is. So exactly. We absolutely are doing that, and we're very enthusiastic to progress as fast as possible, but we need to do it in a deliberate and thoughtful way.
And I just wanted to ask about your accredited solutions that you guys just recently announced as well. If you can go on a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have found over the last couple of years with SmartScore is that there is one of the challenges in the market is we found that we had, on the one hand, our clients coming to us and saying, look, SmartScore is really helpful in terms of me demystifying the conversations around smart and technology. And I would say for the previous questioner, just as a slight tangent on what the previous questioner was saying, data ontologies is a subject very close to my heart, but I think there are two elements to the language barrier. One is the stuff that Marta was talking about, and I think I endorse everything you were saying, Marta, on that. I agree. We're building a kind of Tower of Babel here, and somehow we need to have common technical languages, but that is quite difficult. But the other language challenge is around non-technical people, enabling them to have the right conversations about what the priorities are, what the roadmap should be. And that's one thing that SmartScore focuses on being able to do, allowing the kind of decision makers who historically have had no interaction with technology be able to have the right conversations and make the right decisions so that you can build technology strategies, smart building strategies, and execute them. All of that stuff, SmartScore is focused on, has always been focused on. And we had our clients saying to us that this is really helpful, but how do I go to the next stage? Because so I know I want to implement a particular sort of outcome, a particular sort of solution. I know this is a user story that matters, it matters, but a quick Google shows me that there are 300 companies that claim to be able to deliver that for me. How do I select from that collection of 300 companies, half of which I suspect are vaporware? How do I get to the bottom of it? We had the clients on one side saying that, and then we had the solution providers out in the market saying, this is really challenging for us because we find it very difficult to get in front of the right decision maker at the right point. And then when we do get invited to a tender, we kind of think that it's already stitched up because the way the questions are asked, they've already gone for someone else. So how do I get in front of the right people at the right time? So there was this gap in the market that the buyers and the sellers were saying, we can't interact with each other properly. And that's what the Accredited Solutions Program is there for. It's really to assist the landlords and developers who are our primary clients, finding people who can really help them deliver the solutions that, because of SmartScore, they know what they want to deliver, and then help also the solution providers being able to demonstrate that they can deliver the kind of solutions that our clients want. That's the purpose of it.
Thank you.
Marta, does UL and TIA have a similar program for solutions for products in terms of accreditation and assessment?
So UL have recently introduced the qualifying partner program. I believe it's similar to what Jules was talking about. Monica and others may add to this. But in terms of resolving this dichotomy of technology, solutions, what you're actually getting, of course, we can refer participants back to the working group, Smart Buildings Working Group participants. So we have quite a wealth of expertise and knowledge there.
I'm going to shift over to the Q&A side. There are a couple of folks that have been waiting patiently, and then we can look to get back to David. This is a question from Jack Roberts with Schneider Electric. It's addressed to Jules. Many different opinions floating around in the industry about what makes buildings smart. Can you speak to how SmartScore's specific user functionalities were defined or selected?
Yeah, thank you. sorry, I didn't catch the name of that. Was it Jack? Yeah, thank you.
Jack,
Thanks to
Schneider
Jack.
Electric, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I very briefly touched on something that we described as the Smart Council, and I talked very briefly as well about how SmartScore is kind of by, with, and from the industry. And when I mean the industry, as I mentioned, a core component of the Smart Council were current and existing or current and potential SmartScore clients, and actually at that point I was one of those. So until a couple of years ago, I led the smart buildings team at British Land, who are a large British landlord and developer. And so I sat on the Smart Council and talked to WiredScore about what we thought smart buildings meant and what we thought mattered. We also had a collection of technical experts on it, whether those are smart building consultants from places like Arup or WSP, or whether they're solution providers. And Jack, I can't remember whether Schneider were on it at that point or whether we've been engaged with them more latterly, but it's a perfect example of the kind of organization that was in our Smart Building Council. And essentially, we went through an iterative program of working with all of the individuals on the panel to lay out what they thought all of the critical user functionalities were, all the user stories. And for example, on my part from British Land, we gave SmartScore, or we gave WiredScore, I should say, our list of these are the user stories that we tend to think about, and they gather all of those in and then thinned them back down into the critical list. So it was an iterative process with the industry to understand what really matters. And I should say as well, we had some tenants on that list as well, because clearly it's fundamental to understand what matters to tenants, because that is actually what the landlord is attempting to deliver.
Thank you, Jules. I have another question in the Q&A section from Majoba Fadel. He actually has two questions. I'm going to go with the last one that was submitted. What is the difference between the sustainability and wellness certifications and tech certifications? And that's a general question to either Jules or Marta.
So, Marta, do you want to go first, or do you want me to jump in?
No, please go ahead.
Well, so it's slightly flippant to say that they look at different things, but it's really important that we, at WiredScore, we don't claim to be a sustainability certification. We don't claim to be a wellness certification. Those are separate things, and they look at separate things. However, we do interact absolutely with sustainability and with wellness. So both of our certifications have crosswalks in place with LEED and WELL, and GRESB as well. You get GRESB points by getting WiredScore and SmartScore certified. And you might have noticed that I talked about ESGR in my presentation, and one of our perspectives on this is that it's increasingly important not just to start from a perspective of sustainability, how am I going to drive sustainability, but to think about two things that our certification helps with as you're on that certification journey. So one is technology. One is the fact, and by that I mean technology is fundamental to successful sustainability, wellness, ESGR outcomes in any building, because you need the technology to understand what's going on. You need the technology to be able to optimize the building, and then you need the technology to be able to report back and report on what's going on. So technology is a fundamental underpinner to any good ESG outcome. But also, as I briefly mentioned, resilience is critically important as well, because we've now sadly got through and beyond the point that we can resolve the climate crisis by reducing outcomes. We do need to improve, we do need to create buildings that are resilient to the outcomes that are coming anyway. So as I said, slightly flippantly, they are fundamentally different things, but they do overlap with each other. And just quickly on the other half of the question, there is a very quick point. I know that there is, for example, an MIT report on the financial impact of smart buildings that's out there, but there is today relatively little, if I'm honest, academic literature on that. There is an increasing amount of case study, anecdotal or specific case study evidence on the impact of smart buildings there.
Excellent. Marta, did you have some things to add there?
Yeah, very good answer from Jules. What I would add there that, of course, technology and data, creating that digital fabric where you collect data from all subsystems, sensors from the building, use the data to provide those modern new application services. And so using the technology, the digital technologies and the data is crucial here. And I'll give an example. Recently, there was a presentation on light and sound, and it was a training session, but pretty much it was at some point presenting reverberation analysis on sound and impact on wellness of building participants. How do you resolve reverberation aspects? So these are extremely important, but we do not get to that level of detail. What we will ask is, what type of data are you collecting? Are you sharing that data? Are you learning from it? Are you doing continuous improvement on that data? So that is the journey to smarter. And again, much appreciation for what LEED, well, other organizations are doing, but recognizing here that our focus is different.
Thank you, Marta. Marta, with CABA, do we have time for David Katz to contribute another question?
I think we should be able to give another 5 minutes or so. I know that a number of individuals are dropping off. I imagine they have things booked, but please, let's do maybe 1 or 2 more.
I just want to build on sorry, let me. I had 2 systems going. Can you hear me? I mentioned that we have been in discussions with Australia, with a smart building certification association at the university, and I think in Netherlands. We see cultural differences in what a smart building is, and we see even regulatory differences. Jules, in the UK, where we have people using our Model IB to write the specifications for smart buildings after benchmarking, what they have now. So I just wanted to let people. Spoke to the specification writer for the federal government here in Canada, and this is the struggle. There, as you pointed out, there are lack of specifications as it relates to the ontology, and so we welcome having a broader discussion and a sharing between the organizations, because many of the members of CABA are also in your various groups. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it was Marta Klopotowska or Marta Sonkodi, but thank you so much, David. And I do hope that as next steps, we will continue these valuable think tank discussions. And again, recognizing that we have challenges, problems to resolve, and it will take a big village.
I think there is an anonymous question that was posed, and Jules has some guidance there.
So yeah, thank you. So the anonymous question is: do we think there's a long-term need in the market for cert accreditations? And although they naturally mimic sustainability badges, they're very different. Would technology decisions be better served through industrial technical bodies? I obviously have a bias to this. It's unsurprising, but I do think that over time, and this is a very good thing, over time, legislation and industry guidance will increasingly come in to support direction of travel. Personally, I think that certifications do have a value because there isn't necessarily a market in terms of not just meeting a minimum requirement, but going above and beyond that. And I think technology will, for a very long time, if not forever, be in a category that you differentially, some people differentially want to prove that they're going way above and beyond in order to create a much better set of outcomes and a much better experience. So in a way that's different, from example, from having you know, the concrete frame of your building meeting building regs. It's very difficult to imagine a building that shows off the fact that it's gone above and beyond on the security of the concrete frame. But I do think that technology is one of those areas where both landlords and developers or some landlords and developers will want to prove how far beyond the minimum requirements they've got, and some tenants will want to be able to selectively find buildings that have gone above and beyond. So I think there is a long-term space for accreditation in this area.
Yeah, to add to that, I think we both for SPIRE and for WiredScore, SmartScore, we are trying to assess what is the current state of the industry and also guide through newer technologies, aspirational aspects, but it's a tough business, right? To create these assessment criteria, to run the assessments. Again, I think we're all doing our best here, but challenges lay ahead.
Thank you, Marta. Marta, with CABA, I'm not seeing any additional questions. Maybe I've missed some. If you see any.
I think Thomas Richards has got his hand up.
Okay,
Yes.
Excellent.
Oh, thank you very much. Can you hear me? I
Yeah.
unmuted myself. Okay, so Jules, you mentioned something kind of interesting about facing off with the customers, right? So we had this RFP we were working on with a big customer, dozens of distribution centers with office building attached to it, right? So they wanted thermostats, for the offices, the warehouses. We're talking about, 1 million square feet warehouses, big places, right? They want indoor air quality in the office, and they wanted power measurement for everything, right? So we're going along fine. They're very happy with us. And then somehow got flipped to the purchasing manager, who opens up some catalog and starts questioning the cost of the thermostat. Well, you can't deliver IAQ and thermostats and power measurement on the same platform, all managed from the cloud, and compare that to a thermostat out of a hardware catalog. So I sometimes don't quite understand how, as a company, we sort of fit into this world, how to face off with customers. Maybe there's a longer conversation. Maybe we can have something later, right? Since it's the end of the call, but there's a sort of understanding level. It takes us a long time to kind of get through, and we always kind of struggle with that.
Yeah, I thank you, Thomas. I mean, just to manage expectations, the purpose of our accredited solutions is never going to fully solve those kinds of challenges completely. We absolutely do not want to become a procurement system for companies. That we'd be well over our skis trying to do that. But that said, I do think that the one of the benefits of SmartScore, and I'm pretty sure Marta would say also one of the benefits of SPIRE, although please do jump in if you disagree, Marta, it is that one of the things we help protect everyone against is value engineering stuff out. It's one of the challenges that all sorts of people in the ecosystem find very difficult. And one of the benefits of the kind of certifications that we both create is that it allows you to define why something is important and how something is important and how a particular spec of something even is important, which reduces the scope for either something being entirely taken out or elements of it taken out such that it loses its actual core functionality. So I think I would describe the certification process as something that should help in that direction. The accredited solutions will also help, but I think the problem you're describing goes far deeper than we can solve quickly and easily, and as you say, in one quick soundbite.
Okay, so let me frame this out a little differently. Okay, different customer, right? So we're doing a smart building. We've already done it in a distressed community, and it's a historic building. Okay, so it'd be kind of cool to have this building certified as a smart building. And it's the only smart building in this town. And we're working on doing some other buildings in this town. But so this is all a new topic for me in terms of certification. But I don't know how to navigate this, like to move forward, like this building in this town. How would we go about getting certified? Like, who should I talk to? I'm not sure where to go. Right? Isn't this about certifying smart buildings, or maybe I don't understand this call?
Yeah, I'm sure Marta and I are both delighted to help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are aspects of trying to resolve for cost. I mean, that throws such a big wrench, right? And when we start talking about the tyranny of budgets and then value engineering out of the solutions, then, I mean, all bets are off. How do you stay on a smart building with that, right? So it would be very interesting to have a discussion into the details of this, and how do we still maintain the goals and the integrity of what a smart building is.
Yeah, so
and
if there,
yeah, sorry,
if I can talk with any of you or all of you, like whoever's most important. So, because we're doing a private building already, and we're talking the city to turn their buildings into smart buildings, right? This is a small historic town, right? Distressed community too. But from a marketing point of view, it'd be really cool to be able to say that they have smart buildings, you know? Right now, it's just us saying it, you know, the company, right? But a certification that, to me, from a marketing point of view, would be much more valuable.
And Thomas, I do want to add, this is Marta from CABA. I do want to add that we will be emailing everyone the slides and the presentation today. So just look out for that in the next few days, and we'll have the contact information for WiredScore and TIA on there as well. So you'll be able to reach out to anyone there, Marta, Jules. But I do want to mention that we are actually at the end. We have actually gone over a couple minutes. So thank you for those who did stay on the call. And I do want to thank Russell. Thank you for moderating today's session. Wanda, thank you kindly for your contributions today, and to Jules and Marta for your presentations and for your discussion today. Thank you all very much. And to everyone who attended today, thank you very much on behalf of CABA. And you will be receiving some information in the following days by email with content. Thank you all.